Senator Hawley, recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for waiting for me, and thanks to the witnesses for being here today. It's good to see all of you. Ms. Lerner, I want to start with you, if I could. Are you familiar with the report from Wilmer-Hale, their independent investigation regarding allegations of misconduct by 3 DHS OIG employees regarding the nomination of Dr. Kafari?
I'm aware of the report.
Have you read it?
A very heavily redacted version.
So my office has been contacted by multiple whistleblowers who allege widespread misconduct, including, I'm afraid, you. And I want to give you the chance to respond to those. I always take whistleblower complaints very seriously. And they pointed me to the Wilmer-Hale report, which I've now read, which I have to say is very, very disturbing. I mean, for those who don't know, it's 108 pages here, 70 interviews conducted, 42,000 documents reviewed. And what Wilmer-Hale found is that a number of DHS OIG employees improperly interfered in the presidential nomination and Senate confirmation process regarding Dr. Kafari to be the IG at DHS. Wilmer-Hale notes at the outset of their investigation, or the outset of their report rather, that of course any citizen has the right to question a presidential nomination in their personal capacity. Federal employees in their capacity as private citizens have a First Amendment right to express their political opinions and may contact lawmakers to do so. And of course, that's very important. They go on, however, it is a misuse of authority for a federal employee to use his or her public office to interfere with a presidential nomination or the Senate confirmation process. And then they say federal employees should not use their government resources, including the email system or access to lawmakers or other government officials, for personal gain or for any other unauthorized purposes. Wilmer-Hale further reports in their investigation, following their investigation, that these individuals who were opposed to Dr. Kafari's nomination within DHS OIG came to you, Ms. Lerner, to discuss the nomination. They wrote to you saying that they had a sensitive matter related to the DHS IG nominee to discuss. You all agreed to speak on the phone, and following the conversation, Ms. Costello, one of the complainants, sent you a link to a report regarding California Coast University. I guess the complaint here was Dr. Kafari's PhD was not from a suitably prestigious university. During the interview, Ms. Costello spoke to Ms. Lerner about Dr. Kafari's nomination, stated they were doing so because it was in the best interest of the agency. Ms. Lerner agreed that they had an obligation to protect the organization and figure out whether others knew that Dr. Kafari's degree was issued by a diploma mill. So what Wilmer-Hale has found here is that you encouraged, you were on government property at the time using government resources on government time, that you encouraged what Wilmer-Hale concludes was a serious interference with the presidential nomination process and the Senate confirmation process and a pretty serious misuse of government resources. I know you didn't sit for an interview. Wilmer-Hale said they tried to interview you. You wouldn't sit for an interview, but we have you here. These are serious allegations. I thought I'd give you a chance to respond.
I appreciate you giving me the chance.
I'm not sure your mic is on.
Sorry. Appreciate you giving me that opportunity. The most that I could say right now is that statement of the conversation is not consistent with my recollection of it.
So you deny that you encouraged them to spread around complaints using government resources, that Dr. Kafari was unqualified for the position, that his degree was issued by a diploma mill?
Senator, may I jump in for a second?
Oh, I'd like an answer to my question.
I did not take the actions as described in the statement made by Ms. Costello.
Did you improperly use government resources to interfere with the presidential nomination, the Senate confirmation process?
I did not.
Did you use any government resources, email, telephone, government property? Did you work on this project in government time?
In my capacity as vice chair, and Michael can speak to this as well in his capacity as chair, we would frequently be called by individuals working in OIG offices who had questions or concerns that they thought that we could shed light on. And we would endeavor to, help to answer those questions. So if, when we take calls from people who have a concern and try to steer them in the right direction. And that's all that I did here with these individuals. And you know, I think that's consistent with our obligation as leaders of SIGI. And, you know, at no point was I trying to undermine the nomination of anyone for a PAS position.
Why didn't SIGI open an investigation into these allegations? Why did Wilmer Hale, why did there have to be an outside investigation which found evidence of wrongdoing?
That's a question best directed to the Integrity Committee because
But it was partly your decision, wasn't it, not to open an investigation?
No, I'm not a member of the Integrity Committee, and the leadership of SIGI is purposefully separate from the Integrity Committee to preserve its independence to conduct investigations of OIG folks.
So when the report says that it's a misuse of authority for a federal employee to use his or her office to interfere with the nomination or confirmation process, and that federal employees should not use their government resources, including email systems or access to lawmakers or other government officials for any unauthorized purpose, you're saying definitively for the record under oath you did never do any of those things?
I did not, you know, undermine anyone's nomination for a PAS position.
You didn't use the email system, access to lawmakers, or any other government resources for any unauthorized purpose?
I used the email systems to respond to questions from individuals about their, you know, a situation in their office, and just attempt to steer them in the right direction, and provide guidance to them as they confronted a challenge. That is not, in my view, inconsistent with my obligations as a public servant.
Well, I'm disappointed that we're here and that this is, frankly, it's come to this impasse that we have this report from Wilmer Hale that is quite extensive and quite lengthy. You didn't sit for an interview with them. They weren't able to get your views on any of this. I noticed neither did you, Mr. Horowitz. I frankly think it's very disappointing. And I think the fact that we now have multiple whistleblowers coming to us about this series of events, I mean, this is harrowing reading, to be honest with you, and it's disturbing reading that this would be happening. And I just want to say I'm going to try to get to the bottom of it, but I'm disappointed that it's come to this and in this setting.
I appreciate your concern, but I would say that Mr. Horowitz and I engaged with people on both sides of that situation who had concerns and wanted to protect both the privacy of both of the entities that we were involving, and so that people would feel comfortable coming to us for counseling in situations like that.
Senator, let me respond to that, because the serious issue, Joe Kafari, by the way, used to work in the DOJ OIG, as you may know, was an agent. I talked with Joe both while his confirmation was pending and after he became IG, and he can explain to you however much he would like. I'd be happy for him to do that, how much time I spent with him, as did Allison on several of those calls, to help him as the IG to get settled in and to deal with some of the challenges he was dealing with. In terms of that, I also talked to him actually on, as he can describe to you, and if you'd like, and I think it may be even in that report, when he wanted to move forward and sought to move forward with the allegations and how to deal with them. With regard to Wilmer Hale's reach out to us, and to me in particular, we engaged with the lawyers and asked them to give us some idea of what they were looking to speak to us about. As Ms. Lerner just indicated, as SIGI chair and as vice chair, I regularly receive calls from IGs, from others in the IG community to give them advice, guidance, views on how they can proceed. Some of it was as routine as career advice. Some of it was far more significant. And the question I had for Wilmer Hale lawyers was what information generally in the areas they were looking at and to get at, because we do have an obligation to ensure that discussions we have like I had with Mr. Kafari, are maintained in confidence when the individual who comes to us would like them to be in confidence, and then assess whether there's a need for the investigators to have that information. I've got to understand a little bit more before I just sit for an interview as SIGI chair and be asked about a variety of conversations that I've had with people who come to me. And I frankly view it akin as to the IG Act provisions that are in the law that as DOJ IG, let me put it this way, as DOJ IG, if those individuals had come to me, there's an IG Act provision that requires confidentiality. So I've got to think long and hard about that before making a decision on what to speak to. I never ruled it out, but the question was until the end, until there was an unwillingness to have that discussion. But that was my concern, is that we didn't have a dialogue, and I wasn't comfortable at the time knowing what I was to speak to because, frankly, I didn't have firsthand knowledge of a lot of what I ultimately ended up reading about in the Wilmer-Hale report at the time they reached out to me. I was not familiar with
My time is long expired here, and the chairman's been very indulgent. I'll have some additional follow-up questions for you for the record. I can't adjudicate your dispute with Wilmer-Hale as to why you did or didn't sit for an interview. I'm just noting the fact that they say that you had relevant information. In particular, you, Ms. Lerner, had likely had information about these discussions, would have been able to shed light. You didn't sit for an interview. That's your prerogative. But this is, the fact is, this is serious. This is serious, what I read in this report. I hope this isn't normal. It sure as heck shouldn't be. And I think we've got some more work to do to get answers here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.